I'm Katie, the General Manager at ADAC, and we are so excited to have you here for Get Down to Business. Of course, Get Down to Business is one of our 2 business series we do each year, this one in the fall, and we have Digital Day in the spring. So if you want to learn more about Digital Day, make sure you're signed up for our newsletters. And if you're not, that's adacatlanta.com, and you'll find the tab to sign up there. We have 2 more sessions this afternoon, and then we also have our Color Mix event this evening. And then remember that after our second session this afternoon, we will have a book signing as well in between. So hope you're going to stay for all of that. And a reminder that our Color Mix with Sherwin-Williams event is also a CEU. So if you're here for CEU credits, you'll see Katie, who is the presenter this evening, in order to get that credit. It's business day, but we love to have fun on social media, so use our handle at ADAC Atlanta and tag us and show us the fun that you're having. We have a hashtag for today. That's Get Down to Business at ADAC. So have some fun and tag us. All of our sessions will be on our YouTube channel. Again, that'll be in our newsletter that we'll send out after in a couple of weeks after we get everything uploaded. The CEUs are not going to be on there for obvious reasons, but at the same time, all of our other presentations will be. And our sponsors, we have a bunch of sponsors for this event. Today we had Business of Home, the DFA, which Eric's going to tell us a little bit about the DFA, which is a organization that ADAC is a part of, Design Centers International, Cravat, Black Interior Design Network, Hellman-Chang, Sherwin-Williams. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Eric so he can talk to you a little bit about the DFA.
Thank you, Katie. And thank you, everyone, for coming. As Katie mentioned, the DFA is an organization, it's actually a nonprofit industry. It's the largest nonprofit that is focused on business development and also made up of the key stakeholders in our industry. So it includes furniture brands, textile brands, showrooms, entire design centers like the ADAC, media, which includes like Condé Nast, Melvicor, and just recently we added interior designers into the fold. So it is a great organization that allows great communication between all those stakeholders to really talk about pain points that we face within the industry. We have multiple sessions online and in person throughout the year where we have great speakers and other industry peers and leaders come talk. So just a great place to meet people and also just talk shop and talk about how we can all improve our businesses. So that's my spiel.
Great. Thank you. So I am going to introduce our panelists, and Christi, whom you can see on the screen, was supposed to be with us today, and Delta canceled her flight this morning. So she is with us, not just in spirit, but here via Zoom. So Christi Barbour is the founder and partner of Barbour Spangle Design, a luxury interior design studio in High Point, North Carolina, where she has pioneered approaches that transform both workplace cultures and physical environments. Currently serving as chairman of the High Point Market Authority, Christi has garnered numerous accolades, including the ADAC Designer of the Year, Designers Today Inaugural Power List, and as a 2-time finalist for the Arts Awards. Beyond her design practice, Christi is the founder of High Point Discovered, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to showcasing her city's unique character and creative spirit to a global audience. Her entrepreneurial vision and commitment to community development has established her as an influential leader in both the design industry and her local community. A finance and marketing graduate of New York University's Stern School of Business, Eric Chang helped start a successful digital marketing agency while in college that became ranked one of the top 100 fastest growing companies in the US by Entrepreneur magazine. He ultimately left the corporate world to pursue his passion for art and design, establishing the luxury furniture line Hellman-Chang with childhood friend Daniel Hellman. The duo are self-taught designers and woodworkers who honed their craft during nights and weekends at a Brooklyn artist co-op. After winning design awards in 2007 and 2008, the pair was picked up by design trade showrooms nationwide, including Jim Thompson at ADAC, and were credited with helping build the Brooklyn Renaissance movement of the 2010s. By 2019, the company outgrew its Brooklyn studio and acquired a new state-of-the-art facility on 4 acres right here in Dawsonville, Georgia. Most recently, Chang became involved in high-end residential interior and commercial design, developing homes in Jupiter Island, the Los Angeles Hills, Miami, and Georgetown, as well as luxury spas in Midtown Manhattan. As creative director, his personal style has been covered by Esquire, Robb Report, Details, and even Annie Leibovitz for a global UBS bank campaign. Chang also served as president of the Decorative Furnishings Association from 2017 to 2019, the industry's largest nonprofit focused on improving the health of businesses in interior design. Before founding Christopher Architecture and Interiors in 2002, Chris attended Homewood High School and Auburn University, where he studied architecture and was a Division I athlete. Upon graduation, Chris worked with a prestigious architecture firm in Montgomery, Alabama. As a lead designer and project architect, Chris formed a passion for design, learning from some of the profession's acclaimed designers. Reebals took a hiatus from architecture, during which he worked in vocational ministry with students, young adults, serving as a regional minister to high-security prisons, and designing for inner-city housing projects. As a registered architect, Chris is a member of the National Council of Architecture Registration Board and the American Institute of Architects, where he serves on the board of directors for Alabama's chapter. With more than 20 years' experience in both residential and commercial design, he is a nationally recognized award-winning architect, recently named ADAC's 2023 Southeastern Architect of the Year, and recipient of multiple AIA Design and National HGTV Awards. So, welcome, and thank you for coming today. So, based on what we just heard in your bios, each of you has grown your business in, I think, really interesting ways, and you've taken some different paths. So, Christi, I'm going to start with you. For everyone in the audience, I'm looking at the camera so I can make eye contact with Christi. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you had your own design firm before you merged with Christi Spangle to form Barbour Spangle. And so what has that been like to have a business partner in terms of growth of your business?
Yes, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. First of all, thank you everyone for being adaptable. This is a good example of how we have to adapt at the last minute. So I appreciate that the effort that everyone's gone to get me here today, even if virtually. Nice to see everyone. Jennifer, you are exactly right. I started my business on my own, and then a couple years into it, Christi Spangle, my business partner, approached me about joining together. And we started, as many great businesses do, in my garage and worked from there. But when we were doing everything, we learned really quickly that we were going to need to find how our strengths complemented one another, where we were working in our own areas of strength, and then just kind of figured out the rest. And that has helped us tremendously in terms of our growth and our ability. Fast forward about 15 years later, we had a business coach who gave us a book by the name of Rocket Fuel, where we learned about the dynamics of a really successful business partnership. And from there, we adopted the framework of EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is written about in Rocket Fuel. And we have been running our business since then. I attribute our growth and the success that we have had since then to running on EOS. It has made such a significant difference. And that has led to our diversified channels. We have diversified in the areas of business and the markets that we work in. And so even further still, the team that we have built have become like their own partners in their own right, running their individual channels in their individual markets, which has been really good. And then the last thing I would say as far as growth and partnership expansion is, as of this year, it's something that I've wanted to do since 2021, but the timing just wasn't right until this year, is we've started our own advisory board. And we have brought in a group of outside C-suite people who have expressed interest in helping us achieve our goals and hit our next level. And that advisory board provides great insight. They open doors that we would never have been able to probably open on our own. And they also just have an entirely different perspective on life and business that is refreshing because they're outside of our industry.
And so how often do you meet with this advisory board? Is this something like, every month or?
Oh no, that would be that would be a lot. We meet quarterly, and then in between each quarter, I'll send them an update. But the great thing is that they have all agreed to be, just that person that you can pick up the phone and call. The Wall Street Journal has a great article. I believe it's called Your Personal Advisory Board, that I've followed for years. And I have always had great interest in, identifying these people in our lives who really do make a difference, whether they're in our professional or our personal lives. And this advisory board has been just that. So we can pick up the phone and call them, email them at any given point in time, but our regular cadence of meetings is quarterly.
Great, thank you. Well, speaking of diversified channels, Chris, your firm has a lot of irons in the fire, in a good way. So you focus obviously on commercial and residential architecture. You also have a group dedicated to commercial and residential interior design. You do estate and land planning, and you've expanded into retail. So I'm curious to know, is that diversification, I mean, how strategic was that, or did it happen organically?
Most of it did happen organically, but it was intentional, I would say. I mean, I'm a firm believer in vertical integration. I'm also a bit of a product of the 2007, 2008 market crash. Some of us remember and some may not, but it was a significant, impact on my view of business and other things. But from that, I believe that there was wisdom in hedging a bit. And so a lot of the kind of cross-pollinations across our businesses are very intentional relative to kind of hedging our portfolio. So for example, our development division, if they are, and they typically do, if they're designing a higher end development, then we're close by if they need an architect or an interior designer. And so usually we have investors as well. The investors see some value in that. We call it the speed of trust because there's a lot of trust across platforms. And so if we can execute with greater efficiencies, we can cut out some of the challenges with legalese, and we can deliver with more efficiency, then there's value to investors, there's value to the development. In a very similar way, relative to the retail business, our architecture and interior design company, may specify several $1 million of procurement for a project, and it's as you know, it's very visceral, it's very tactile. So having a shop where our clients can walk in, they can feel and touch and experience product is also very strategic. So it happened both organically, but I would say it was very strategic as well.
And I'm really interested in that retail component because has that driven a lot of new business for your, architecture and interior design divisions?
It's a great question, and it does some. So we have been very fortunate, and I know we'll get into social media conversations a little bit later, but over the last several years, our social media presence has grown, and every given month, we may have a little over 1 million people touch our platforms in some shape, form, or fashion, whether it's Pinterest or Instagram or whatever. And so one of my business coaches said to me, is there a way to sort of tap into that? Now, we also recognize on the architecture and interior side, especially on the residential space, we're working with sort of the 1%ers. We're not working with a broader market. So in some respects, our marketing is very laser focused. We recognize that we want to reach out to the folks that not only appreciate good design, but to some extent can afford it, right? So you have to be somewhat mindful of how you say that. I mean, but there is a barrier to entry, a level of exclusivity that not everybody can afford. At the same time, with that many people touching our businesses in some shape, form, or fashion, we would say, look, it's great to have more of a ubiquitous brand. In other words, where people recognize who we are, hopefully, but we also recognize there's a very limited, I guess, demographic that can pay for our professional services. But wouldn't it be nice if we allowed a broader population to somehow touch and feel maybe the curated product that we would deliver through a retail experience? So it also is very strategic, and you think about maybe somebody in their early 20s that's a young professional, and they typically do have a vision of where they want to be, or maybe a dream house or something down the road. Maybe today they can afford a candle, but maybe
That's
in
right.
10 years they can afford a second home.
Right.
And so we love to kind of, as we enter into that, those relationships with folks on the retail side, we love to keep them in our ecosystem. And it gives us opportunities, we believe, down the road to kind of maintain those relationships as well.
Starting that relationship building.
Yeah.
So, Eric, I followed the course of Hellman-Chang. It's so interesting. So, you and your business partner founded it in Brooklyn. You were entrenched in Brooklyn. And then pre-COVID, you decided to move the operations side of the business down to this amazing facility in Dawsonville, Georgia. And your business partner moved down here to oversee things. Your plan was to stay in Brooklyn and to oversee design and marketing. But then, like what a lot of people did during COVID, you moved down here to Georgia, and you're still here. So tell us how that move has benefited your business. I mean, obviously, having this large manufacturing facility has helped you from an operational standpoint, but what are some of the other benefits?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's just been an amazing place to do business. We were talking about it earlier, a lot less red tape. But also, there's rich manufacturing down here, which we were delighted to see, and we were able to pull the best from around the area to come work for us. Part of the move also was because towards the tail end of being in Brooklyn, we had a lot of other well-known trade brands coming to us, asking us if we could manufacture for them. Because we're known for our quality, we're known for our engineering, our finishing, our ability to customize. And so we had that request and realized we just needed a lot more space. So just talking about diversifying your portfolio. So we do actually white label production of a couple other brands in our own space. So that's been truly beneficial. And also just being here in Atlanta, I think has been great. There's such a bubble when it comes to an interior design social scene that we were talking about earlier as well, that I really appreciate. So the networking has been fantastic. It's just been a great place to grow the business into the next step.
So you have also expanded, you're doing interior design work. So was that always kind of part of the plan, or did you how did that come about?
That was never part of my intention. I think that coming into the industry, I think just being known a little bit as a tastemaker, a lot of people had just asked me if I would be willing to design their interiors. And until the right project fell in my lap, which was a beautiful home in Jupiter Island about 10 years ago, I wasn't really even considering it. So it was the right project with the right budget and the right kind of, I guess, end result that I really want to strive for if it were to be like a debut project. So I kept it very quiet and candid.
Your microphone got flipped off.
Oh, it did.
But yeah, you're not on.
So sorry. Okay, everyone hear me? Okay, cool. It was the right project at the right time, and it led me down a path of, like you said, about 6, 7 more projects completely on the side that eventually culminated in what you guys are seeing. There's images from my first major interior design project that I just completed a couple months ago. You'll see the Hellman-Chang logo on the bottom right, where it was just too big that I kind of had to debut it and say something to the industry.
So, that's been an interesting development for your business. How will this be a major part of your business going down the road, or?
I'm not sure. I think it's just, we'll see where it takes
For
me.
right now, it's.
Yeah, like I said, if the right projects come up, then great, I'll take them. From that, we had a nice debut for for that residence. Gallery Magazine and David and Ann Sutherland co-hosted an event. We had, I think, 300 people come to it. It was wonderful. And from that, I've already had 4 or 5 inquiries for taking on more projects. So right now I'm in a position where I'm thinking about, is it the right budget? Is it the right project? Will it continue to develop the brand or myself as a designer? And so those are the key questions I need to ask before taking somebody on that I think are really important in the industry that we're in, right? Like I know a lot of designers, you know, if they're struggling with filling their pipeline, you know, it becomes kind of like a race to the bottom where you are trying to be the lowest bidder with the interior designer to your left or your right. And I don't think that's where the industry needs to be. We are a luxury service. And we shouldn't be commoditized. So as an industry, we really have to protect ourselves in that sense. And I think that, you know, the generations of opacity about what the heck interior design actually is has kind of led us to this moment where the general consumer doesn't fully understand what we do as an industry. And we're fortunate enough to be kind of at a tipping point, kind of thanks to COVID, where the American consumer cares now more than ever about their home and interior design, and they have the medium to search for it, whether it's Pinterest or Instagram. So we as an industry kind of had to make a decision as to how we are going to engage our customers and our future customers into that conversation and bring them into the fold. You know, will we continue to have a very opaque kind of iron curtain, or are we gonna say, no, this is an inviting industry, you're all welcome to explore it, and here's what we do, and here's how we serve you guys. I think if we're able to take advantage of that, you know, the future is very bright for our industry.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So having a robust pipeline is something that's very critical for one's business to maintain a growing, thriving business. And we now have a number of tools that we can use to help us generate new leads and to help us build our brands. And I want you to weigh in on some of these. One is brand extensions. And that's something that I feel like we're hearing, I think more designers and architects are looking at brand extensions as part of their growth strategy. So things like licensed product collections, strategic partnerships. I think you could maybe argue that a book could be under that umbrella. So is this part of your growth strategy? Who wants to start? Christi, would you like to start?
Sure. I really appreciate the opportunity, and Eric and Chris, you guys made some really great points. In regards to how we look at brand extension, it's probably a little different than some do. You know, you mentioned books and licensing, but we're looking at it a little differently and really tapping into the decades of experience that we've had and where we thrive and what we do. And out of that has come 2 things. One, we have launched a procurement business that is to the trade. And so we're helping other designers who may not be able to meet annual minimums or even opening orders or have access to lines. Because we've been in business for so long, we have access to so much that we want to share. And so that procurement business could be to designers, architects, property developers, and managers. And we're having great success with that and helping other people leverage their business, make more money, and then also buy back some time for their own either design or just to live their best life. And so that has been really good, and we look at that as a triple win. It's great for our industry and our fellow design trade, but it's also great for the manufacturer because they've got an avenue to tell someone to go to if they can't meet those minimums. And then it's good for us because it leverages our buying power with our particular vendors. And, you know, it certainly adds a little bit to the bottom line. So that's been good. The other way that we're looking at it is through showroom consulting. We've spent the better part of the last 2 decades plus designing furniture industry manufacturers' showrooms. And so some of the biggest names in the industry have come to us to help them with whether it's a brand regeneration, a complete move, a complete gut and remodel. And so we're helping them with those things. And through that, we have learned so much over the years in High Point, Atlanta, and in Vegas that we're helping other companies do that. and expanding that showroom consulting business. So these two things have been critical to our growth, and like you said, that filling that pipeline.
Gosh, that's really interesting. Well, Chris, what about you? What kind of brand extensions are you pursuing or do you want to pursue?
It's another great question and great points. I do want to just echo something Eric was saying relative to a race to the bottom. I was interviewing a student that's going into our industry a couple weeks ago. I just think it's worth reinforcing. He was asking me about going into business and some of the pinch points that I would recommend he avoid and other things. But I did suggest to him that something that really hurts our industry, I think, is when designers get into this competition where it is a race to the bottom. We can do this for free, or we can do this at a discount. And you know, if you're committed to quality, and the built environment is impactful, just not only, you know, for the occupant, but beyond. If we're passionate about what we do, we're passionate about our industry, we care about the product that we deliver, we have got to be resolute. And I would say that for our whole industry, we've got to say there is value to what we do.
Absolutely.
And we should not just give away our services. You know, relative to, I guess, the question on our brand strategy and growth and diversification, a lot of it is really our vertical integration. I mean, with our retail experience, we do design product. So it's one way to keep our designers, our very, very talented team of designers engaged. I mean, one designer may be more micro-centric, some are more macro. I'm more of a big brush guy. I'm a schematic guy. But somebody that loves the details, that whether it's furniture design, lighting design, we've been able to introduce some lines that we push through our retail experience and our digital platforms. And we've done other things. And look, it's very difficult to say without this being misinterpreted, but we have a 501c3. It's a charity. It's called Christopher Kids. Caroline back in the back runs it for us and does a great job. We have multiple staff that work with that company. What they do is that team really engages our broader team to offer design services mostly to children who may have a socioeconomic challenge, a physical infirmity. So for example, imagine a kid in a wheelchair that's always dreamed of having a tree house. Well, we can design one for them. We do it for free. We have a construction company that will do the service for free. We have a lot of our partners that will provide product. But you know, while we want to be philanthropic and altruistic, and we hope that that's at the heart of everything we do, we've also had people that find our brand through that.
Right.
And you think, well, does that muddy the waters? Does that make it less generous or altruistic or whatever the right term is? I hope not, but it's still a way. I mean, and so I would suggest, you know, to the audience, where are your passions? You know, if you're chasing some diversification or other lines to extend your brand, do it where your passions lie. And you know, I was passionate about that specific issue because I worked with young people for years. I love it, and I love to see a little boy who wants a tree house to fulfill those dreams where maybe otherwise he couldn't. So, you know, following your passions, but whatever it is, it can certainly extend your brand, I think.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, Christi, what you said, and Chris, it's, you're doing something different. You know, I think when some people see if someone has success doing something, then you inevitably see everyone kind of flock and try to do the same thing. And so it's interesting to see how you're just going in a slightly different direction with great results at the end, but to your point, following your passion. Now, Eric, I mean, I know you are also now in the interior design space, but what does a brand extension look like for a furniture company?
I think the most adjacent one would be different product lines. Lighting for one. We developed a lighting collection about a year and a half ago, so now we're just kind of in the development process, factory making it, so I think a couple more years out. So that's like the obvious one, or maybe an outdoor collection. But you know, then to echo what Chris had just said, which I really truly believe in, brand diversification for the sake of it, I would not recommend unless it's something you're passionate about. And that is very true for our industry. Anything in the luxury space, the design space, like it has to be done with passion. Otherwise, your customers are going to see it, they're going to notice it, and you're not going to sell it. I mean, that's the bottom line. And your retail store is my favorite store in all of Atlanta. So he's clearly passionate about it and does a fantastic job. And I love going in there and buying candles, right? And hopefully I can afford Chris in the future. So I want to say that's super important. I've always believed, I think it's true, that no matter the economic climate, as long as you are doing the best of something, somebody is going to want to buy it. That's the reality. And like Chris, we were a product of the Great Recession, 2007, 2008. That's when we started our company. And we just stayed true to that. We avoided the temptation of what we call poison bread, which is, will you do this for me? Will you make this for me at a cheaper price? Because the other guy down the street, their wood shop is charging me this. We avoided it and said, no, we do this really well. And that's what we stand for. And you're going to come to me because you want the best of something. And that long-term gain and avoiding, to have that in mind, really, for our industry, which is a very slow-moving industry, is definitely true. So I just wanted to echo that, what Chris was saying.
Good point. So social media, obviously it's something vitally important. And how has social media helped you to grow your business? I mean, have you landed great clients from it? Obviously I would think it would help with brand awareness, but give me some specifics, Chris, of how it's helped your business.
Yeah, so when I started this in the early 2000s, the proliferation of social media was not as robust, certainly, as it is today. And in the embryonic phases of that, we kind of adopted some efforts early on, but at least for the first 10 years, everything that we did was word of mouth. And it was hopefully doing good products, building good relationships, maintaining strong relationships, not commoditizing every client, just seeing them as more of a relationship and opportunity. And that certainly helped. But I do think parlaying that into the brand awareness relative to social media has been great for our industry. And for us, a lot of it has extended our reach, not just regionally, but nationally. We have projects up and down the West Coast, up and down the East Coast, all the way across from Dallas to Houston to Boulder, Utah, Jupiter, all the way up to, I was in Rochester, New York yesterday, which is, by the way, great town. Rochester's really spectacular. And
are these clients who found you via social media?
Most of them found us through social media or some other outlet similar. And a lot of it is one person connects to another. We've done several projects for professional athletes, and you do one for a certain guy and he tells a buddy in the locker room sort of thing, and that's helped. So word of mouth is very important. Trying to maintain, obviously, a reputation is important, and then just the proliferation. Look, a buddy of mine, this is probably a terrible illustration, but he was recently divorced and moved down to Birmingham, and he was struggling meeting people, and I said, look, I'm married, I'm happy, but if I was single again, I think I would do online dating. And he goes, you're crazy. Anyway, 2 weeks later, he's got like 15 dates, and there's something about the technology that can help our industry. It probably help.
Who knew?
Yeah. So anyway, terrible illustration, but I do think it helps the proliferation of your information. There's also certainly a lot of hiccups and a lot of copycats and a lot of that
There's
probably
the bad
isn't the
that goes
greatest.
with the good.
There it is, for sure.
So Eric and Christi, what about you? Have you had, great success growing your business thanks to social media, or is it just kind of play into some of the other things that you're doing? Can you pinpoint that it's help with clients?
If I post this piece of furniture or put it on a story, I definitely see like immediate response, right? Inquiries. But social media has basically democratized the whole branding and marketing industry. So what better opportunity do we all have to directly create dialogue with our potential clients and through social media, right? I mean, it's cheap, it's fast, it's easy. I personally don't do it as often as I should. If I'm really busy, I don't post very often at all, which is something I got to work on personally. But it really helped define and really control what we wanted to say as a brand and as a company. And that's the most valuable thing that you have as a designer, right? Because your product ends up in someone's home, and then it's not really seen outside of that. So it's your chance to differentiate yourself. Yeah, I mean, I think it's truly important. Right now, I think if you guys aren't on it, I think TikTok is honestly like the next.
Really?
Yeah.
I've resisted.
I know, we all do. And again, we're slow as an industry to adapt. So I think the people that successfully navigate TikTok within the design industry are going to reap the benefits.
I agree.
Okay.
Greatly, yeah. So I recommend it. I haven't done it yet, but that's my nugget. I'm clearly not doing what I preach, but I highly recommend it.
Christi, are you still with us?
I lost her.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about good old-fashioned face-to-face networking, because I think in the design industry, we're so fortunate. We have so many opportunities to meet other professionals. I mean, I know I made so many contacts early on going to events here at ADAC. We've got Market Week, High Point, there are professional groups like DLN. So do you still invest a lot of time in that face-to-face networking?
Yeah, I know you were talking about earlier. I travel a lot, so.
I think, this is a relationship-based industry, whether it's myself to other interior designers or you guys to your potential clientele. I mean, I took 100 flights last year. I think for interior designers, it is truly important because you're also seeing what's out there. This industry is rare in that it is competitive, but it is the most welcoming, competitive environment I've ever seen. Designers share resources, they share advice. If they lose a client, they refer another designer. Like what other industry does? It's incredible. So I think network is extremely important, especially for you guys to go to these events and meet editors or other people that have great social media followings. I can't tell you just by being reposted on a story or a post how many new followers I can get. So that exposure is very, very key.
So Christi, I don't know if you heard the question, but we're talking about how important face-to-face networking is and getting out and meeting people. And I would think living in High Point, you have a lot of opportunities to do that. It's probably still very important for you to be out there.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Sorry for the drop in communication, and I'm sad I missed the last little segment from Eric. But yes, it is incredibly important for those face-to-face connections, and High Point Market starts this week, so downtown right out my window is just completely abuzz with activity. We're excited for our industry to come here, and like Eric mentioned, it's just such a warm and welcoming community, even though it is highly competitive. We tend to share best practices and help one another, which I think is really important. Personally speaking, I tend to be a bit of a wallflower, so if I get into a really large group, I don't do as well, but those smaller, more intimate groups, definitely that's where my one-to-one relationship building really kicks in. And the other area that I would say for me, networking, that has been a surprise factor is the work that I do in the community. And so I have sat on a number of boards, and those boards have, over the years, when I look back at the string and connect those dots, those boards have led to incredible projects and also relationships with people that have led to other projects. And so it has been a very big part of our, I would say, networking, but also our business development.
And so, Chris, that sounds like that's the same with you.
It is, I do enjoy it. I think the older I get, a little more, I don't know if the right word is neurotic. I might stand in the corner of the room, but I was in Rochester yesterday. I'll be in Knoxville later today. I'll be at High Point on Friday for a party, and so I believe there's so much value in that face-to-face interaction, and unfortunately, it is a little bit lost with the proliferation of, as we were talking about, social media and the digital platforms, especially with younger designers. I think it's a challenge just to look somebody in the eye, communicate well.
Engage with them.
Yes. But, you know, when somebody lets you into their home, I mean, it's a very intimate thing, right? And so we tell people we're interviewing for projects, we say, look, this is a mutual interaction and interview, but you're kind of marrying us, and it could be for a couple of years, it could be a long time. I mean, we have repeat customers and clients that we've worked with on multiple projects that, you know, you build these relationships with, they give you keys to their home, you really feel like a part of their family. And we take that very seriously, and we want to be very respectful of that, but you know, I mean, I jokingly say if I was paid to be a marriage counselor, I'd probably be wealthy today, because you get into a lot of that too.
I can imagine, yeah.
But it's fun, it's dynamic, it's interesting, it always evolves, and so, you know, I say if you look at it as a blessing and an opportunity, then those interactions can be very dynamic and fun.
So I don't know if we maybe are getting close to time, but I do have one quick question for you, because something that's really struck me in our conversation is that each of you is in some ways very laser focused on your growth strategy, not at all in a bad way, in a really good way. And so I think something that some of us struggle with, I know I do, is that it's so easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day minutia of work that, you know, it's easy to keep putting off, well, okay, what are the next steps for my business? Or, you know, I need to take a step back and look at the big picture and figure things out. So it seems like you're very proactive about that. How do you, you know, regain focus when you're so busy? Or do you have, you know, brainstorming sessions once a week, or, you know, what's been helpful to you?
Yes, we do that, not to jump right in, but I think it's massively important and a fantastic point. You can get so caught up in the weeds, or you lose sight of the bigger picture. So we will do quarterly retreats with our staff. We'll pull away and we'll meet with individual groups. We quite often talk about bigger picture, dynamic and long-term goals. If you're looking at week to week, but you're challenged to contemplate 5-year goals, and you're forced to sort of pull out and think strategically about how to get there. But it's a challenge. You got to prioritize it, time box. You got to allocate time to it.
Eric, what about you? I mean, is that something you're?
Yeah, a couple of things. Which Christi had mentioned earlier, she was talking about the book Rocket Fuel, which incorporates EOS. That is all based off, the original book was Traction. That really introduces EOS. And if you guys have that book and you bring it on a plane, you're going to be talked to by a number of people. That is a transformative operating system. It really identifies holes within your own system, how they need to be plugged, accountability, who can do it. It gives you a really good framework. It takes a couple of years to fully implement. And it doesn't matter how big you are. You could be a one-man show. You can still learn a tremendous amount from this book. Rocket Fuel is if you have a business partner and how to then kind of marry that together. But that's been really, really effective in kind of bringing our company to the next level. I'm finally seeing the fruits of that labor now. So we're kind of calling ourselves like Hellman-Chang 2.0. That's been helpful. Also, I know Christi says you have advisors that you meet with every quarter. You have investors that you meet with every quarter. That is also really key. People outside of this industry, preferably in finance, you know, so they can ask you hard questions about your numbers. You got to know your numbers in any business that you grow. That can hold you accountable to make sure that you're doing what you need to do as a business. They talk about exit strategy, meaning like how would you sell? It's not because you're trying to sell your business. It's because they're asking you, how are you adding value to your business every quarter? That's the key question. So that if you were to sell it today, is it worth more than it was than when we spoke last? So those are questions that are constantly being asked, is how do we create more value in our business for our customer? So yeah, two very key things that I highly recommend to do to give focus to any business.
What about you, Christi? I mean, you told us about your advisory board being one thing, but do you have any other suggestions for us?
Yes, and it's going to echo exactly what Eric just said. Because we work with EOS as an entrepreneurial operating system, we've now been doing that for about 8 years. And like Eric said, it takes several years to get going. But one of the things that is key is every quarter you have a quarterly meeting, or once a year an annual meeting. And we just finished up our 2-day annual last week. And one of the things I was reminded by in that meeting last week is how important it is to step away from the day-to-day interactions of the business and really focus on the business. Because I found leading up to that meeting, I was very stressed and I was feeling a lot of pressure, and we just have a lot of transition happening in our company right now, and it felt insurmountable. And then I walked into that 2-day session and spent 2 days with the people around the table that I trust, and I walked out thinking, we can do this. And it's just elevating your brain to a different space so that you have the time to really think about it. And like Eric said, you've got people challenging you on what value are you adding? What do your financials look like? What is your 1-year plan, your 3-year plan, and your 10-year vision? And most especially, what are you going to do for the next 90 days until we meet again to hit those goals for that 1 year? And so how are you moving that forward? And I think that is so critical to us, anybody sitting in the room. I love Eric's suggestion, Read Traction. It is a great book. What the Heck is EOS is even better because it's a fast cartoon-like read, but it'll get you, it will help you to understand where you are, where your holes are, and where you can go. And it has tremendously changed the trajectory of our business.
That's great.
Same. Traction, same.
All right, well,
There you go.
I know what I'm going to order on Amazon
Yeah.
tonight, so. Well, great. I think we're ready. Are we going to do Q&A? Does anybody have any questions for our panelists? Okay.
Okay, here, I'm going to bring the microphone around just to make sure that Christi can hear us too. Okay.
Thank you, Katie.
I was wondering, through these discussions through either your boards or internally, did you ever employ or use a consultant for business development?
I have not.
Okay.
We've been tempted to, but we've always turned it down. I find that our industry is a little oddball to like most consultants. They don't really understand it. Again, I think it's because we've been so opaque. So every time we've had proposals, we just like, you don't get it. It would take me longer to explain it to you than you to give us something effective. Yeah.
Christi, what about you?
We're in the same boat, just like Chris and Eric. It's always been internal.
Anyone else? Sure.
Tell me what you all are doing with your SEO. Do you engage someone that helps you with the back end of your website so that Google searches help you potentially get people who are inquiring about your business?
Yes, I mean, we do engage professionals that help us with SEO and the operating, the back of house technology components of the digital platforms that we work with. And I will tell you too, because it's such an evolving model, and I'm not a tech guy. I still draw with a pencil, by the way. That I think it's important to be mindful of refreshing, whether it's refreshing a team or staying on top of it with the consultants or teams that you've engaged to work with you, but we do.
Here's a follow-up question. If you do get calls from people and you inquire how they found you and they say, oh, I searched on the internet, do you find that those prospects in your pipeline are turning out to be good prospects for you, and how are you, I guess, interviewing them to find out if they truly are worthy of your time to potentially have a project with them?
I generally find that if they find us online, it's not going to be a good match. I think at this tier, you're probably going to get clientele that is familiar enough with the industry, kind of understands a little bit how it works in the pricing model, because that first uncomfortable conversation about pricing, proposals, all that, you can kind of, you suss that out. But I think generally, if they kind of find you through a wide net via online, they're probably not savvy enough to understand what they're going to get themselves into, generally speaking.
And I might add to that also that, one, I try to disengage from those early conversations, and fortunately, we've grown a little bit where I can have somebody that engages early on. I tell people, look, I draw pretty pictures. Let somebody else talk about contracts. My personal hell would be if I were an accountant or a lawyer, so it's just the way I think God put me together. But relative to what Eric's saying, if it's through some social media or digital platform, if that's, paint that with a broad stroke brush, it tends to be more like an assistant or somebody that saw it and said, hey, you ought to talk to these people. And then at that point, if you do engage with them, I don't know what the percentages are, but we have found some really good clients that we found through some digital platform.
Christi, has that been your experience?
Yeah, I think Chris has hit on something. We have been found through social media and through our website on a number of occasions, and it has turned out to be good. I don't know the numbers exactly, but I do believe, to Eric's point earlier about just the generations of opacity that we've had, one of the things that our marketing manager has been trying to do for quite some time now is really pull the curtain back on our process. And so through social media, she is putting all of our people in front of the camera and doing storytelling. And then that way, what it's doing is breaking down those barriers, those generations of opacity of what is it that we do? How do we provide value? How do we problem solve? Why would you hire us? And so when people finally do, especially if they've been watching us through social media, when they do come to us, they've already developed a little bit of a relationship just in getting to know us and getting to know our team. And so those are the ones that I find tend to be better in terms of leading to projects. It's that quick, I think the question was like a quick Google internet search. They may or may not pan out.
Yeah, I want to add to that. Showing process is so key, especially in our industry. People love to see how we make the furniture. And I'll say, I remember talking to a designer, like this is 10 years ago, before we were that active on social media. And she was saying how it wasn't a problem for her to get the clients to understand the price point because she was very transparent. She would literally open up everything to their clients. And once they saw the amount of administrative work, they're just like, I get it. I'm not touching any of this. This is you. This is your alley. So it's counterintuitive, but the more transparent you are, I think the better people understand the value of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Makes sense.
100% agree. I think you could have an entire lecture series on what you're talking about relative to opacity, because our industry it's been so kind of cryptic, and I love opening up and being more transparent with clients.
And this is the best industry to do it. You walk in the design center, I would say there's a million stories that haven't been told yet, right? These are all brands that are like family owned. They've been around for hundreds of years. I mean, each one is such a captivating story. It's got so many layers. If we had taken the time for a couple generations to be more open, I mean, people would be coming to you every day, right? Just wanting to be engaged within it.
Couldn't agree more.
Katie, I think we've got a question there.
Okay, perfect.
Hello. I am new to the industry. I've always had a passion for design and interior decorating. I've been doing it all my life. So what would you say to someone new in the industry? How do they even build up a pipeline?
Well, I think it's the next first thing. It's the next step, and it's doing a great job on the previous step. Not leaving holes unfilled, relationships deteriorated, if that's a word. I say often to our team, I've never had a client, maybe it's not entirely true, but I've never had a client complain about over communication. So just staying engaged with people, doing a good job, and I will tell you that your name will get out. And it's a lot about just being a good professional, being honest, transparent, passionate, executing well. The next person will come. The next step, you'll take the next step. I mean, I worked, I think it was about 5 years, I was basically solo, maybe 4 years before I hired first person. And today, on any given Friday, I think I pay about 100 people. So, you know, it's grown and have a bigger animal, a lot more mouths to feed. But 23 years is just taking the next step and being faithful with the previous.
I also want to say that, you know, just marketing 101, if you're really starting out, you haven't defined yourself, you know, go to your fellow interior designers' websites, their social media, find out what avenues they own. You really kind of got to define yourself and think about your brand with empathy. Think about who your target client is, where do they live, what are their favorite brands, where do they travel, where do they eat, and that kind of defines how you communicate to them properly in a way that really hits the emotional chords that they need to say, I'm going to spend money with you. Do that first and really make a clear vision for who you are as a designer, because we're now in that space where consumers, if they're looking for a designer, they're looking for what makes them special. And we're all at a place where we can convey that pretty expeditiously. So that's my tip.
Does Christi have anything to say on that?
I mean, those are great comments, and I'd really be repeating. So I think you've got great information there from Chris and Eric.
Okay, good. I think we have time for one more.
So I just want to share an experience that I've had with one of you on stage.
No.
And they don't know me yet, but my name's Kathy Patton. Kathy Patton Designs in Chattanooga. And I recently did the Cashier's Designer Show House, and Christopher Collection, his store that we're referring to, was one of my partners. And my experience with your brand has been nothing but magical. The people who work in your store have made me feel like just such an important person just because I'm a designer. And I brought in a client, we bought some things, and I drive from Chattanooga to Birmingham to shop at your store.
Thank you.
And, but I just want to say the importance of brand. That's one thing that I've seen. I used to work for Chick-fil-A in another lifetime. And brand development and maintenance of your brand is so important. And I think that Christopher Collection does a great job, all the way down to the way you package and wrap your gifts and so forth. So I just
He's a
want to say
little salty
kudos.
discharge. Thank you.
Everyone
Sweet.
should go to that store in
Thank you.
Homewood, Alabama.
Nice.
Well, what a great way to end on a
you,
kind
Kathy.
note.
I feel inspired.
Exactly, without kindness. Thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you, Christi, for joining us virtually. Really glad that worked out. And I just want to thank everyone here, and I want to especially say thank you to the DFA, Decorative Furnishings Association, for sponsoring today's panel.